What are the weaknesses of an ISTP? Before I can answer, please subscribe to the channel so my dog is able to cope with the meaning of life, and hit the alert bell so you can be notified when I go live. That being said, what's up, Ego Hackers? I'm C.S. Joseph, here to answer your questions on any topic Jungian analytical psychology or the four sides of the mind. And the source of today's question is Quora, as per usual. Let's check it out. Alright, so we got Deepak, Dinakaran. They are people that, despite having the ability to survive on their feet, there is a 50% chance they could really struggle in an awful lot in a massive crowd at, for example, a charity gathering. Could you provide examples, sir? They find it difficult to make decisions, for example, 3 years prior when it happens. What? They would find it difficult to be a chief. Their combined introversion and perception together would make it difficult for them to run an entrepreneurship. No, that is categorically false. That is false. Some of the best entrepreneurs in my life are actually ISTPs, and ISTPs are amazing in entrepreneurship. In fact, my cousin Mike, he's an ISTP, and he's a self-made man, worth a lot of money, and he worked his butt off, and he did it all on his own. And that's typically how NI Child has to do it with ISTPs. I know another ISTP who has a very successful freeze-drying business. My cousin Mike, for example, he's HVAC. Also, there's like a music equipment creation business. Friend of mine, his dad, he's an ISTP. He does that basically. So you know, he creates amps, for example. It's just that is ridiculous. And then he says they could put their less athletic counterparts, for example, INFJ people. Wait a minute. Are you saying INFJ folks are less athletic? That's not actually true. Actually, in my own personal experience, extroverted sensing inferiors can be some of the most athletic of all the types, just like basically Templar types in general, I think, are the most athletic of all the types, to be fair. And then I have noticed some STJs who are also extremely athletic. If you're going to talk about people who are not so athletic, probably the least athletic of the types are NPs, just straight up. But yeah, although I have, you know, from a Templar standpoint, I have noticed that ENFJs get really, really big sometimes. But anyway, I'm not going to read that bullet point because that's just terrible. All right, they would find being in an office fairly fulfilling. What? An ISTP being in an office fairly fulfilling? No. This guy does not. No. Sorry. Is there a downvote button? Yes, there is. Thank God. Okay. Brendan Milton lived in Marietta, Georgia from this time to this time. Okay, apparently that's relevant. All right, my weaknesses. Okay, so we're assuming this guy is an ISTP. My weaknesses, and I know them quite well, but they haven't proven to become much of a nuisance yet. 1. Feelings. I can't express how I feel the majority of the time unless it's anger. That's fair. I can't express myself emotionally, especially around someone who has a mutual understanding of how I feel about them. I wouldn't go out of my way to show how much I care because you know already, okay? 2, commiseration. I find it challenging to comfort someone who's having a dilemma in their life because most of the time people don't seem to care for a solution to their problems, which confuses me why I continue to complain about it if I'm telling you how to fix it. Gosh, this guy is starting to sound like an ISTP. Conflict. I don't care much for arguing with anyone because most people are ignorant and fail to see both sides of the spectrum and end up getting really emotional rather than rational. Yeah, he's trying to hope that people would be more TE than FI, even though FI and TEs are kind of like, you know, that's what it is, and he's trying to like get them to see logic. That's the main 3 for me, and I can really getting in depth about it's really an understanding thing. That's why I'm having most trouble with, and it seems to be my weakness. I can't relate emotionally with people, and I don't really want to. That's fine. I am going to upvote that. So thank you, Brendan Milton, for your post. That was excellent. Yeah, I just had to like downvote the other one because it's absolutely terrible. But let's talk about the weaknesses of an ISTP. Let's talk about their let's do like, you know, lowest to biggest. Actually, the emotional weakness thing of, you know, having a hard time expressing your feelings. A lot of people think that that is their biggest weakness, and it's actually not. It's not their biggest weakness. Although it is a thing, it comes from the extroverted feeling inferior. They are afraid of making other people feel bad. And ISTPs, they can basically be really guilted into doing things. FE inferiors, as I've said, that even TE inferiors, extroverted judgment functions in the inferior slot leaves a person open to a form of manipulation, and even in some cases it can lead to being manipulated into having sexual relations with someone, which is basically a form of rape, right? And this happens on a consistent basis. A lot of people out there disagree with me on that, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, but it can and it does happen. I've met plenty of people with extroverted judging functions in their inferior slot within my coaching practice that I've had to help them get through that, especially like an INTP who is extroverted feeling inferior and an INFP who has extroverted thinking inferior. Those two people, like the INTPs often do get guilted into sex, and then also extroverted thinking, INFPs, they end up getting shamed into sex, basically, or the risk of being shamed into sex, which is where blackmail comes into place. But the point is, extroverted feeling inferior, why is that weakness there? It's because they can be guilted into doing basically anything that they don't want to do. Now, some ISTPs, because they're interest-based and they have their extroverted sensing parent developed, then when that happens, then the risk of them being guilted into doing things that they don't want to do goes down. But the younger they are, the more impressionable they are, and that carries the higher risk. So if you're parenting an ISTP, get them to really live in the moment and understand that they need to be responsible with what other people are doing. You need to teach an ISTP to judge people by their actions and not by their words. That is how you protect extroverted feeling inferior within an ISTP. It's super, super important. And honestly, over time, the ISTP, because of how concrete they are, they will start to see the value of concrete actions over words. This is why ISTPs really, really struggle with saying, I love you to people. They really struggle with it because saying I love you, the words are just kind of meaningless to them. And this is why ISTPs often get a bad rap about saying the words I love you to somebody, especially ISTP men, because to them it's just words. Words aren't real. Words are subjective. What is objective is concrete actions and showing love by actions. And it's like in ISTP, you see like an ISTJ woman go up to an ISTP. In fact, this actually happened with my cousin Mike and his wife one time. I actually observed this happening. And she's an ISTJ. And she goes up to him and it's like, why won't you tell me you love me? And she was grandstanding as an ISTJ. And then, when they grandstand, they bring in everyone else around, etc., to put her husband on the spot. And this is in front of all of his employees and whatnot. And it's, it happens. It's disrespectful, but it happens. But she was feeling really hurt, and his response was uncanny. He's like, "How could you believe that I don't love you when I do this for you on a regular basis, on a daily basis?" Right? It's because to him showing love to his wife is basically all action. It doesn't necessarily need to be word because the action has more value, right? So the weakness of an ISTP is, the weakness here is the words and understanding how that goes. Extroverted sensing parent needs to be developed in order for an ISTP to really understand that they must judge people by their actions, right? And naturally, an ISTP tries to show love, for example, to a wife, etc., by showing those actions, right? Those concrete actions. But sometimes early in their youth, their extroverted feeling inferior is willing to listen to people's words and not so much their actions. So how they expect themselves to be judged by other people by their actions, they need to be judging other people by their actions. This is one of the most important lessons you could teach an ISTP to get over the weakness of being guilted into doing things that they don't want to do. It's really important. Another weakness they have is worrying about not having enough research. And ISTPs, all you have to do is you have to develop the habit of actually reading. And my cousin Mike, probably the man that I respect the most on this planet. He is an ISTP. He's my supervisor type. Basically, we supervise each other and whatnot all the time. It's super helpful, super useful. But he taught me the value of reading. It's so interesting. He taught me the value of reading, and what I do with Audible and whatnot, and how I'm reading audiobooks all the time, that's literally from my cousin. And how he does it, he doesn't do Audible and whatnot. What he does, he just has books. He has a book with him in his truck at all times, and then when he's on a break, he might read if he's bored or whatever. But quite frankly, he has books in every bathroom of his house, and he just reads whatever's there and just continues and it's right where he leaves off. Everyone's got to, sit on the loo every now and then, you know what I'm saying? So then when you're on the loo, you just, you read a book. And he gets through his books, and he ends up learning so much more, right? And it really empowers his ENFJ subconscious because he's able to listen more. That's another weakness that the ISTPs end up having is, well, they don't listen to people. They can be really, really stubborn to people, and the lack of listening ends up becoming a problem. And ISTP is supposed to be, not INFP or INTP, but an ISTP is supposed to be a great teacher. They're supposed to become a great teacher, and they only become a great teacher if they stop being so stubborn and actually start listening to people. Because if they listen and learn from people above them, they'll be able to teach the people below them and then bring those people up, etc. That's basically the purpose of the ISTP's life, is to become that great teacher. They can't be stubborn. So yeah, they need to do the research. They need to not be stubborn. They need to make sure they're judging people by other people's actions and not other people's words. And their greatest weakness is being completely unaware of other people's intentions. ISTPs have this problem when they're judging people by other people's actions. They assume that the intention is attached to the action. Why is that? Because introvert intuition child, when they make a choice to do an action, they make a choice to perform an action every single time, so they assume everyone else is just like them. So when Mike is talking to me and he's, maybe he's judging me, or maybe he's criticizing me, or maybe he's being stubborn, who knows, but he sees my intentions and my actions as the same thing. That's the biggest weakness. The problem is that from my point of view as an ENTP, actions and intentions are completely separate. So how my cousin Mike actually learned this is he did this through an old saying he taught me, and I say it all the time. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. He taught that to me, and that's how he's been able to grow his extrovert intuition trickster and realize that intent and actions are actually two separate things. How many times has you as ISTPs been out there, made decisions, and then you were completely unaware of the consequences of your actions, right? So you can't, where you have unintended consequences to your actions, right? So if that's the case, how could you actually judge people and saying that their action and their intentions are the same? You cannot do that. And that's one of your biggest weaknesses, also known as a lack of awareness of consequences to your actions, etc. Thank God you guys can fix and solve problems, because when you're in that situation, or any situation, you can tactically and tactfully get yourself out of that situation that you kind of accidentally put yourself into because you're not aware of the consequences of your actions, right? So, if you would like the chance at your question being answered on this channel, please post it on Quora and tag me, or leave it as a comment below. If you'd like a free copy of the type grid to assist you in typing yourself and others, please visit csjoseph.life/typegrid and put in your name and email, and then it will be emailed to you directly. Anyway, with all that being said, folks, I'll see you guys tonight.